Hi everyone, this is Daryl and welcome back to Hypeword. Today I'm going to be ranking my favourite classic dystopian fiction. So I've been a fan of dystopian fiction for a long time, and while I've read many classic dystopian books, there are still loads that I want to read. So I want to caveat this video by saying this isn't a definitive list, more of a ranking of what I've read to date. I started off by needing to define exactly what classified as dystopian, as what sounds like dystopian to one person might sound like utopian to somebody else. So I came across Masterclass's 5 central themes of dystopian novels, which really helped me define what it was. So all the books I'm ranking generally feature one or more of the following: government control, environmental destruction, technological control, survival, or loss of individualism. So working towards my absolute favourite, I'll start at number 8 with Animal Farm by George Orwell. George Orwell's allegory Animal Farm, published in 1945, is about a group of pigs that stage a rebellion against their human farmer. The animals' rise to power is based on the Russian Revolution of 1917 and is a comment on how the revolution resulted in a government that was more oppressive, totalitarian and deadly than the one it overthrew. This checks the government control box of our dystopian fiction. What I love about Animal Farm is that it's a satire on equality that uses barnyard animals as a metaphor, where the animals strive to live free from the tyranny of their human masters. Inspired to rebel by Major, an old boar, the animals on Mr. Jones' Manor Farm embrace animalism, the animal equivalent of communism, and stage a revolution to achieve an idealistic state of justice and progress. A power-hungry pig, Napoleon, becomes a totalitarian dictator who leads the animal farm into oppression, where all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. Number 7 on my list is Lord of the Flies by William Golding. Lord of the Flies by William Golding, written in 1954, sets its story around a group of schoolboys who are abandoned on a tropical island after their plane is shot down during a fictional atomic war. Conflicts emerge between the boys as they strive to build a civilization and fight for survival. For obvious reasons, this checks the survival box of our dystopian fiction bag. In an attempt to recreate the culture they left behind, the boys elect Ralph to lead, with the intellectual Piggy as counsellor. But Jack wants to lead too, and one by one he lures the boys from civility and reason to the savage survivalism of primeval hunters. In Lord of the Flies, William Golding comments on the savagery that underlies even the most civilized human beings, and the belief that humans are naturally inclined towards evil and violence, and how only self-realization will bring epiphany. So this is one of the tensest books I've ever read, and I think the fact all the characters are children emphasizes this. It makes the violence more shocking somehow. What I found really clever about this book is that when the kids do terrible things, they do it in a way that is both innocent and deviant at the same time, completely out of character for children and yet exactly how children behave. There's a dichotomy there that's really interesting to read. My 6th favourite classic dystopian novel is Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, to be referred to as Dados from now on, by Philip K. Dick, takes place in a post-apocalyptic San Francisco after a nuclear global war in 1992. This 1968 novel was the basis for the film Blade Runner and explores the dangers of advanced technology where androids are indistinguishable from humans and mass extinction has led to artificial animals. In the future, androids have invaded Earth from space colonies and live indistinguishable among humans. The only way to tell who is an android is by taking the Voight-Kampff test. So Dados deals with both environmental destruction and technological control. You can also argue that it deals with survivalism as a human species. The main theme of this book, and the thing that makes it great, is that it openly questions how technology will change what it means to be human and the very essence of empathy, who or what is deserving of empathy and what isn't. It also, in the great style of PKD, leaves us with more questions at the end than when we started. Number 5 on my list is another PKD. This is The Man in the High Castle. I've done a few videos on this book, but I couldn't not include it here. It's like the epitome of dystopian society set in an alternate reality where Nazis won the Second World War. It pretty much deals with all 5 definitions of dystopian fiction. Published in 1962, the story is set in an America that has been divided into the Japanese-controlled Pacific states of America and the German-controlled eastern portion of the country. In this reality, a man known as the Man in the High Castle has written a book where the Allies won the war and the Nazis lost, seemingly a window into another universe. What makes this book so great is that it would have been so easy for PKD to glamorise the story with Nazis running around killing everyone and rebellions and bombs and, well, pretty much how Amazon did it. But Dick approached this differently. It's a quiet, subtle book that looks at how ordinary people deal with the question of morality and how they survive during dark times. At number 4, we have We by Yevgeny Zamyatin. We by Yevgeny Zamyatin, written in 1920, follows a spacecraft engineer living in a future nation called One State. In the One State there is no love, no music, no individuality. The citizens wear uniforms and are referred to by numbers. The story follows D503, a rocket scientist who writes a diary trying to convince anyone who reads it of the perfection of the One State. He runs into trouble when he becomes involved with I-330. He becomes repulsed and yet strangely attracted to her, and is drawn further into the resistance against the One State. I recently did a video on how We influenced an entire generation of dystopian fiction, which I'll leave a link to here. We deals with the themes of government control and the loss of individualism, and is also a comment from Zamyatin on government's willingness to sacrifice the rights of the individual for what is seen as the greater good. There's one quote in the book that has stayed with me that epitomises the loss of individuality and control of self. Every morning, with six-wheeled precision, at the same hour, at the same minute, we wake up. Millions of us. My third favourite dystopian novel is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. Brave New World, written in 1932, explores the danger of reliance on technology. The ruling world One State uses powerful conditioning technologies to control reproduction and citizens' actions. People are grown in labs, and a type of eugenics is used to manipulate the characteristics of babies in utero. When they grow up, they will either be alphas, betas, gammas, deltas, or epsilons. Alphas are considered the apex of society, being smart, physically fit and attractive, while epsilons are considered the underclass, being physically less appealing and less intelligent. The lower castes are grown in batches so that hundreds of epsilons are exact clones of one another. But importantly, the citizens of this world state are supposed to be conditioned so that they don't want to be anything other than what they are. The story revolves around the central characters who begin to find that their perfect lives of hedonism and consumption begin to unravel when they travel to the reservation, a primitive area that has remained unaffected by the world state society. Huxley wrote that the focus of Brave New World isn't science itself, but science as it affects people. What I find really interesting about Brave New World is how Huxley conveys a society where science trumps humanity. Number 2 on my list is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. The Handmaid's Tale was first published in 1985 and takes place in a dystopian society where nearly all of the women have become infertile. So the few that can still have babies are rounded up, brainwashed and assigned to powerful men in a distorted attempt to restore the human race. The story follows one of these women, Offred, as she becomes the handmaid of the commander. The Handmaid's Tale checks a number of boxes in our dystopian bag, such as government control, environmental destruction, survival and loss of individualism. This is my number 2 dystopian fiction for a number of reasons. Firstly, in my opinion, it's flawlessly written. Secondly, it actually deals with a number of real-world issues, such as the fact that many Western countries are facing declining birth rates and ageing populations, oppression of women and religion's involvement in that, society as a patriarchy, stereotyped gender roles, just to name a few. I was also captured by the way Atwood created the dystopian society by mixing what are arguably the worst aspects of many institutions. It takes government-controlled markets and secret police, typical in communist societies, indoctrination and restricting education from organised religion, and brutal caste systems from fascism. You've probably guessed by now, since you haven't seen it yet, my absolute favourite classic dystopian fiction is 1984 by George Orwell. In George Orwell's 1984, the world is under complete government control. The fictional dictator, Big Brother, enforces omnipresent surveillance over the people living in 3 intercontinental superstates remaining after a world war. The story follows government employee Winston Smith, whose job in the Ministry of Truth involves the rewriting of history to suit his country's leaders' current agenda. He begins a journal documenting his misery and the constant state of fear he lives in. Events see him become involved with Julia, where together they revel in their hatred against society and eventually become involved with an underground group known as the Brotherhood. 1984 checks every single one of our dystopian boxes: government control, environmental destruction, technological control, survival and loss of individualism. Without sounding like a depressive masochist, the reason this is my all-time favourite dystopian fiction can be boiled down to the fact that it's so damn bleak. I mean, it's depressing, it's shocking and violent. Okay, so I sound like a depressive masochist. This story isn't fun, but it's gripping and it presents us a version of ourselves which is horrifying. If you haven't read it, you have to. You're going to hate it. So those are my ranked classic dystopian books. I'd love to know your favourites in the comment section below. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe in all the usual ways. Until next time guys, happy reading.
Run.